So an amazing amount of training and certifications, an amazing amount of experience combined with his wonderful personality. So it's wonderful to have you this evening, Will, and over to you for the program.
Thank you very much, Hemant. Thanks for the invitation, Jay and Hemant, and also thanks for the introduction. So, yeah, let me just share a little bit of some of the tools that we are using in stakeholder-centered coaching. I noted that in the list of attendees are a number of people who actually already stakeholder-centered coaching certified. And yeah, feel free to even put in the question box that you're certified in Marshall's coaching methods. So we have a good list of all the people who are here who already did that before. So let me shortly say a few words about Marshall, and then I'll introduce the agenda, what we're going to talk about. In the meantime, also, kindly, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the question box, and I will address them as we go along. And also there, of course, there is ability and availability to ask questions later on in the webinar. So a lot of you already heard about Marshall many times. Marshall is quite renowned in India. Actually, he was in India in Hyderabad just 2 weeks ago. Marshall has been recognized as the #1 leadership thinker by Thinkers 50 and Harvard Business Review, and also the #1 executive coach by Global Coach Guru. And Marshall, of course, is famous for his 2 most famous books, Triggers and What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And these books not only have been #1 bestsellers, but also about 3 weeks ago, they were nominated as being in the top 100 in Amazon leadership books to read in your lifetime. So definitely needed to be read by anybody. And so if you have not read them yet, then this would be Amazon's plead to you and say, hey, get these books and read them. Marshall also has been recognized by many other associations and organizations, amongst others, the American Management Association or the Leader to Leader Institute, which is the Peter Drucker Foundation. And yeah, I'm very pleased and happy to be working with Marshall very closely for a long time. I'm the master coach, but more importantly, the practice leader for Marshall Goldsmith Stakeholder-Centered Coaching in Asia and in Europe. And yeah, as Hemant already said, I basically have a business administration background in technology management. And one of the things that is really great in working with Marshall that I have been doing a number of publications with Marshall, but any of our coaches can do that too, writing articles together with me and Marshall about how they use stakeholders in the process, or how they basically measure results and get results in measurably making leaders more effective. So the stakeholder-centered coaching process, I've been working on that with Marshall for a number of years. The Global Leader of the Future assessment, the whole certification programs around that, I've been working on together with Marshall, and also made a number of research contributions with Marshall around the Global Leader of the Future. And most excitingly and most recently, last year when Marshall published Triggers, I wrote a book together with Marshall called the Triggers Coaching Field Guide, which is specifically used for coaches to use the book Triggers in their client relationships as they coach people. Good. So anyway, that's a little bit how I work with Marshall and what we do. Just a little bit to kind of couch the conversation. Marshall is famous for a number of things, not only being the #1 leadership thinker, which is all nice and fine, but also Marshall is famous for no growth, no pay. It's about coaching somebody for a year, making sure that you have measurable leadership growth as seen by stakeholders. And if the person, the leader, gets measured better over a year, then Marshall gets paid, and elsewhere we don't. So very straightforward. We are the largest executive coaching network in the world, and that is very useful for clients because then they basically have a uniform coaching process wherever they work with us in coaching their people, their leaders. So today, basically, I'm going to highlight 4 different things that are tools that you can use in your coaching process. And I'm happy to also share with you the PowerPoint that we are working with today. And this is going to be very interactive. So in your chat box, make sure your chat box is open, that you can basically put in your contributions in there as we go forward. So one of the things we do is creating what's the value, what's the business case for the leader to grow as a leader, and what's the business case for the leader to involve the stakeholders. The whole what's in it for me is something we address very early on in the coaching process, and the onboarding of the stakeholders is part of that. And what are some of the ways that you can, here it says in number 2, leading change involving stakeholders. What are some of the ways that you can involve stakeholders in the whole coaching process to change as a leader, but also change the perception of the stakeholders at the same time? And then number 3 is about change, is about coachability, and we actually assess leaders' coachability at the beginning of the coaching process, and we use 3 areas for that. And one is, the areas are courage, humility, and discipline. We know that leaders who are high on courage, humility, and discipline, they change, and the ones who are not high on that, they don't. And then last but not least, how do you kind of measurably grow leaders to really develop leaders in real time in the whole leadership development process and being a leader on the job? So we're going to go through this step by step. Now, one of the questions that already pops in here, stakeholders, kind of who identifies them. So let's kind of take one step back, right? So one of the things we need to talk about with the leaders we coach or the client companies is say, well, if a leader is effective or not effective in the organization, who determines this? So would you be so kind to go to the chat box, ladies and gentlemen, and just put in there your answer. So if a leader is effective or not effective in the organization, who determines that fact? So stakeholders, yes, but give me some other references to what stakeholders in the organization are. So managers, so the leader's boss, and then yes, the team, the senior management, so the bosses, maybe some partners, right, depending on what type of firm it is, and coworkers. Coworkers in general, that's actually what Marshall many times refers to, and this can be also then peers, right? So basically, direct reports, team, peers, and bosses, managers, right? So we call them stakeholders. So we try not to involve too many outside parties, whether it's customers or vendors or suppliers. So let's focus. Most leaders have enough stakeholders inside the organization to keep themselves busy. So I wouldn't really make that stakeholders field wider than that. There's no need for that. Yeah? So yes, managers, direct reports, and peers determine whether a leader is effective or not effective. That also, so these are the stakeholders. Now that also means that if a leader becomes more or less effective, so if a leader grows in his or her leadership effectiveness, that's also determined by the same stakeholders. And that's a very important notion, because if a leader needs to change, the leader needs to change in the eyes of the stakeholders. If the leader changes but the stakeholders don't see it, the change doesn't exist. And this is the same in our families at home and with friends, that if you as a person change but they don't see the change, it doesn't exist. And if you doubt this statement, then please try it at home. So let's look at how do you create that value case, how do you create that business case for the leader to change. So this is a list of areas that generally leaders choose to get better at. So some of the areas are in the area of communication, as you can see here, which is about listening, being more assertive, conflict management, influencing and persuasion. Some of the areas are more around developing organizational culture and leaders, which is about diversity and cross-cultural things, cross-functional aspects, stand up for people who undermine teamwork, collaboration, building trust, driving team change or culture change, and self-confidence. And then there are some task-related areas for leadership growth, and there could be things like they're all around managing performance. So it's about delegation, empowerment, execution, being more entrepreneurial or take more calculated risk, hold others accountable, and deal with performance issues. So let's assume that the leader says, and based on assessments, we have assessed that, and the leader says, I want to get better at delegation. So we now create this business case together with the leader. So the question to the leader, i.e. you are the leader, the congregation of leaders for today. So if I as a leader get better at delegation, what other benefits do I get? What do I also get better at? Can you kindly again go to your chat box or the question box and just put in there your comments? So if I get better at delegation, I also will get better at time management. I get more work done. Yeah, my workflow is better defined and I can follow it more smoothly. I can manage my team better, right? So there's more team engagement. I can achieve my objectives more effectively. I listen better. Yes, I optimize my resources better. There's more transparency and more productivity. I can manage the big picture, so I have time for other things to focus on, and I don't need to boss around that often, etc. Right? So it is easy to sit together with a leader and brainstorm for a little while and get 25 benefits. Now, at the same time, there are some costs involved, and the cost might be, I need to spend a little more time with people, or I have to take a little risk and trust my team, or I trust the other people I delegate to. So there are some costs involved, and now the leader needs to make the decision in saying, is this worth it for me? These 25 benefits that I'm going to get and the cost that I have to invest in that, is that worth it for me? And the leader really needs to answer this with a resounding yes, because that's the what's in it for me business case. And that's important because if you spend time, and I spend about half an hour or so talking with the leader about this particular page, that's really important, because the better you make this business case, the more the leader is bought into making the change happen, because it's a valuable change. And the leader will also see that not only do I get better delegation, which is very valuable to me, but also there are many other things that are going to be changing in my life, in my business life, in my business environment, that are also very valuable, like leveraging people's capabilities, as I see here, or being a better role model, right? So there's a lot of other benefits and value that I get out of that by just focusing on one thing, in this case, delegation. Good, so we make that business case for the leader. That's the what's in it for me. Yeah. And then we tell the leader, okay, as you know, the stakeholders are the ones who determine whether you get better or not. So let's now look at this from the stakeholder perspective. So if you as an individual, as a leader, get better at something, let's say delegation, yeah, then what are the benefits that the stakeholders will get from this process? So we basically use the same idea. Yeah? So when the leader gets better at delegation, what are the benefits that the stakeholders will get? So kindly, again, go to your chat box or question box and put in there your comments on the benefits that the stakeholders will get. So they will get more freedom. They learn to be leaders themselves. They get more responsibility. People feel respected and motivated, and they engage themselves. They are engaged. They feel more empowered. They learn and grow. They feel trusted. They feel inspired. They feel there is more collaboration going on between them and the boss, but also between them and other team members. They have opportunity to do more and different tasks. There is more opportunity to be creative. You create a more sustainable team and relationship with people. people are more independent, at the same time more interdependent. There is a more return on investment for the stakeholders to be part of this. I don't need to go to my boss so often because my boss is trusting me, right? People get better competencies, they have better skill set, the team is more empowered. Yeah, the word boss should never be used. That's fine. I mean, that's all about what's in people's minds. So it's either manager or boss. But yeah, people also feel that they're a leader and not a boss, so to say. Yeah. Be more open in communication and opportunity to work on different tasks, etc. Right? So the whole, and if you think about it, the benefits that we just talked about, they're actually in two categories. One category is functional benefits. So if the leader is getting better at delegation, then the stakeholders, they become functionally better, right? So they develop themselves, they become better in execution, they become better in certain task management, they can be better in decision making, etc., right? So they become better in their functional area that they are in. And the other category is actually relational. So the stakeholders also receive a lot of relational benefits. They feel more respected, they feel more engaged, they feel there's a better relationship between me and my manager. So there's all these aspects also going on. And that's about 50-50, so to say. So half of the benefits that the stakeholders will get in this process is very functional related. They become a better performer in their job. And 50% is relational related. Now, so this is huge because as you make the business case for the leader, what's in it for me? And of course, you make that with the leader and the leader confesses him or herself what these benefits are. This is now their business case. And then the leader also confesses or articulates what are the benefits that the stakeholders are going to get. And that is the business case for the stakeholders as defined by the leader. So this is huge because now the leader has not only opened his or her eyes up to the fact that if I focus on one thing, my leadership life is going to change and the life of my stakeholders is going to change. So by just focusing on one thing, everything is going to change. But we call that bottleneck behavior or tipping point behavior. So in this case, delegation, if that's the most important to the leader, and as a result of the assessments that we did, then that's a tipping point behavior. If the leader focuses on that particular behavior, everything else will be changing as well. Good. So as we do this with the leader then sees, hey, this is going to start making a lot of sense and this is very impactful to me and to my business. So if I get better at one thing, then also the stakeholders get better in many other things as well. So this has an impact on my business results, that's the P&L on the balance sheet, and it impacts my engagement of the people in my team. And also, when the leader involves stakeholders, then the stakeholders benefit as well. They also grow and develop at the same time, which again impacts the same business results and the same engagement of the stakeholders, the team. So this has a huge, it's like a virtuous circle, right? It has a huge benefit on both ends, and it creates a snowball effect, really. Now, as we do this in the coaching process, we literally write this down, we make the case with the leader, and share this with the leader, obviously, right after the coaching session. Say, hey, okay, this is the business case, this is great, this is beautiful. So 3-4 months down the road, if the leader says, it's kind of difficult to involve stakeholders, this and that, you can come back to the business case and say, hey, yeah, I know it's not easy. We never said it's easy. Coaching is simple, it's not easy. That's what Marshall always talks about. These are the benefits that you wanted to get. These are the benefits that your stakeholders wanted to get. They were very important 3 months ago. I assume they're still important now. I mean, These are timeless aspects you defined at that point. And then leaders realize, yeah, that makes sense. I really need to help myself to move forward in this process and stick with it. Okay? So there were some questions around stakeholders and who selects the stakeholders, but I think we kind of answered that now already. So I will not further deepen in that. If you have other questions, feel free to drop them into the question box anytime, please. Good, then let's focus on the next aspect. So the next aspect is, how do you involve stakeholders in the change process? Because to involve stakeholders at the outset, that's nice and fine. But one of the unique things about Marshall's coaching process is to involve the stakeholders throughout the whole coaching engagement, throughout the whole year that the leader is being coached. And one of the ways we do that is to use the feed-forward concept. So let's say you are all my stakeholders, and I want to get better at influencing. So you're my stakeholders. I want to get better at influencing. So can you give me 2 or 3 suggestions that I can do in the next 30 days to get better at this? So would you be so kind to go to your chat box and put that answer into the chat box? So if I get better at influencing, I want to get better at this, what are 2 or 3 suggestions that you can give me to get better at this in the next 30 days? So it will improve my listening. So improve your listening. So listen better to people, spend more time understanding what my colleagues mean and say, be more accountable for the things you do. Have some more trust, build trust, be clear in conversations, be more to the point in conversations, be articulate. Listen better to understand others first. Yeah, exactly. So maybe ask more questions, understand other people's agenda, talk towards their agenda or talk on their agenda. Use others in the organization to influence others. So don't try to influence directly, but try to influence indirectly. Stop picking up the phone when you talk to me. Yes. So all these kind of things are great suggestions. Thank you for that. So feed forward is a very powerful tool that we use in the whole coaching process. And the leader on a monthly basis actually involves their stakeholders in a 5-minute conversation in saying, I want to get better at influencing or execution or whatever leader has selected, and then ask them, can you give me 2 or 3 suggestions I can do in the next 30 days? And then a stakeholder comes up with something that is relevant to them as a stakeholder. And I think we had some really good examples here because some people came up with some more general aspects, as in listen better or ask more questions. And then one of you, Jai Shankar, said, stop picking up the phone when you talk to me, right? And that is a great suggestion because this is a good example of a very what we call micro behavior, of a very detailed behavior that the leader might have and which is not helpful in the whole process of influencing or which is annoying to that particular stakeholder. So that is ineffective behavior. And if that really matters to the stakeholder, then it's important for the leader to notice and to consider to do something about this. Okay, so this whole idea of getting stakeholders' feed-forward suggestions is really important because if it matters to the stakeholder, it also should matter to the leader. That doesn't mean that the leader has to do it, has to do what the stakeholder says, but at least if I as a leader know that Jai Shankar is frustrated by the fact that I'm picking up the telephone when he talks to me, then for me, that's like, hey, yeah, that's a good point. I should really think about that and help myself to be not ineffective through that kind of behavior. And actually, it sounds like a very simple example, but Shaishankar, actually, there are quite a number of CEOs who get these suggestions from the stakeholders that I've been coaching. So, good one. Now, think about it. What's the difference? What are the differences between feedback and feed forward? So also kindly go to the chat box. So what are the differences between feedback and feed forward? And you can use FB for feedback and FF for feed forward if you want to. What are the main differences? Yeah, so feedback is about reflection. And as Kanan is saying, feedback is about critical about the past. So that's very backward looking, historical looking. Whereas feed forward focuses on the future. It focuses on what can be happening moving forward. Or Shai Shankar, being a good student of Marshall, feedback is about looking in the rearview mirror, and feed forward is looking into the windscreen forward. Okay, so good stuff. So yes, feedback is about looking to the past, and feed forward is looking into the future. And if you think about it, feedback is about attribution and retribution. It's about who did when and when and where and why. So it's all about attribution and retribution. And feed forward is about contribution. And we use the psychology and the paradigms of successful people a lot in the whole coaching process. Now, successful people, they hate feedback because it's about the past, it's a history, they cannot change it, can't change the past, things happened, we're wasting time evaluating why things didn't go the way we wanted it to go. And successful people, they love feed forward because the future, we can still build, we can change the future, that's my business, that's my job, I love the future because that's what we can move towards, okay? So successful people have much more joy in using feed forward than using feedback and being on the receiving end of things, okay? So feed forward is an extremely useful tool to involve stakeholders in the process. Now, one other aspect that is really important to use in Marshall's coaching process is assessing coachability. You probably heard Marshall saying many times, saying that if people don't want to change, you can't make them change. Because this is about adults, this is about successful people. Even if you're a great coach and you're very smart, if the leader doesn't want to change, it is very unlikely that you can make the leader change. Now, at the same time, Marshall always emphasizes that if you select your clients well, if you work with the right leaders, they change even when you as a coach don't put a lot of effort into the process. Alan Mulally, one of Marshall's most famous leaders he ever coached, changed the most, and Marshall spent the least amount of time with Alan. And Marshall did a number of actually research and case studies around this, and basically evidenced the fact that leaders who want to change, they change regardless, more or less, of the effort that the coach is putting into the process. Yeah? And let me tell you a little bit how that looks like. So we know that leaders who are high on courage, humility, and discipline, they change. And leaders who are low on courage, humility, and discipline, they don't. So let me share with you what is courage, humility, and discipline in the framework that we're using. So courage is about, make it about you as a leader. So get out of your comfort zone, change what you can change, take some risk. If something doesn't work, change something, try something different, and reflect on your values, reflect on your beliefs, and try new things in order to create new behavior. By definition, change is uncomfortable, so have the courage to be uncomfortable. And the second one is humility. Humility means don't make it about yourself. Make it about the people that work with you. Make it about your stakeholders. So involve them in the process, ask them for some suggestions, and consider their suggestions seriously, because if it's important to them, it should be important to you. And then last but not least, discipline. So it's about thinking over the suggestions from the stakeholders. Maybe you have a few ideas yourself as well as a leader, and then create an action plan and have the discipline to implement that action plan well and make sure that change becomes visible to others in the organization, to the stakeholders in your organization. So we do an assessment with leaders on that, and then they realize that courage, humility, and discipline is important. And then actually we do the following exercise with them. And then again, you can do this exercise with the leaders you coach right there. So we ask the leader, and I'm asking you now, if a leader is low on courage, humility, and discipline, what are the behaviors that leaders show? So would you be so kind in the chat box to put that in there, or the question box, whatever is comfortable. So leaders who are low in courage, humility, and discipline, they are in denial, they postpone coaching sessions, or they postpone decision making in general, they're defensive, they tell, sell, and yell. Very good one. They're not time sensitive, they're not time effective, they procrastinate, they're insecure or secretive, they're avoiding to giving direct feedback or direct communication even on performance to people. They argue, they finger point, they give excuses about circumstances. They're negative in their outlook, or critical in their outlook, or they're critical of other people's behavior. Short-tempered, avoid commitment, indecisive, and they think that they're giving the coach an opportunity. So I make no eye contact, yes, or their eyes are going all over the place. For the NLP people here, there's a lot of eye evidence that comes into these kind of conversations. So the emotional vulnerability. So they feel easily emotionally vulnerable. They take the easy way out, get irritated very soon. So I mean, it's all great stuff. Thank you very much. So that is exactly then. So with the leader, we ask the leader, so leaders who are low in courage, humility, and discipline, what do they do? The leader comes up with his or her comments and examples. Great, you write them down. Then, dear leader, if a leader is high on courage, humility, and discipline, how does that look? What is the behavior that they show? So please, again, go to your question box. That seems where most people are putting their comments. So they are humble. They own up to their commitments. They smile. They're pleasant to work with. They take responsibility. They're open. They're committed. They inspire other people. They engage other people. They stick to timelines. They deliver results as earlier agreed. They take some risks. They're time efficient. They're enthused with various options. They always look forward to the next coaching session. Yes, they offer coffee or other things, or tea maybe in India, right? So they're joyful. They're also comfortable in being frank in sharing information or even feelings with their team and direct reports. And they can say, I don't know. So one of the things that Alan Morelli and Marshall have been working on a lot is part of their new book that's coming out is Stakeholder-Centered Leadership. And a lot of that has to do with eliminating shame, which is be able to say, I don't know. Yeah? Even I'm the CEO. So be proactive, be candid. So good. So these are all great behaviors that in the discussion with the leader you can collate on this particular slide. And then you can tell the leader, okay, well, so dear leader, as we're going to work with each other for a year, and courage, humility, and discipline is important in the process, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you want to commit to? How high do you want to be on a scale of 1 to 10? So ladies and gentlemen, you're my leader. So what do you think leaders say when you ask them this question? On a scale of 1 to 10, how high would you like to be, dear leader? So we have some conservative ratings, but all in all, I see that people say 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so people come up with high numbers, right? Normally, if we do this with American leaders, they come up with 11. So it doesn't really matter, right? So it's really about making sure that the leader is willing to commit to 8, 9, 10, something like that. And that's fine. Now, and this is important because now you can tell the leader, yes, that's exactly what I thought you would be, etc. So by the way, as we work together in this process and you're not the 9 that you would like to be, would you allow me to point this out to you? And the leaders, all of them easily say, yes, no problem. And this is important because now you have them committed in the process. Because one other thing you can throw out right there in that discussion is say, dear leader, well, thanks for sharing this this conversation and information, because what you just told me here is really confession before the sin. If you are low on courage, humility, and discipline, these are some of the behaviors that you will do that you just confessed. And if you're high on courage, humility, and discipline, these are the other things that you will do as you just confessed. So it's a very easy way to not only have the leaders committed, but also help the leaders realize that, yes, it is not unusual for people to go back and forth between low and high courage, humility, and discipline. At the same time, if you as a leader want to change, then courage, humility, and discipline is required to a high degree. So this is a simplified way of doing that coachability assessment, because conversely, if the leader says, well, I would love to be a 9, but in my organization with the people I work with and the boss I have, etc., I can only be a 4, etc., blah, 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 then the conversation goes a different turn, principally in terms of, well, if you cannot commit to be high on courage, humility, and discipline, then we are pretty sure that you might not be ready for this whole process at this point in time. So therefore, give it a thought, and this might not be the way forward for you. So if you can't commit to this, then let's not continue the coaching process. I mean, we say this in a lot more gentle terms, but basically that's the main message. And that is exactly what Marshall always talks about in terms of client selection. If the leader doesn't want to change, you will not make him change. If the leader wants to change, you can help the leader change, and the leader will change a lot. So client selection is key. This is the tool with which we do that. Bikramjit here is asking if one of them is absent. So in the way we talk about it and assess it, we don't really assess them individually, courage, humility, and discipline, as 3 individual areas of assessment. They're actually assessed together. And to specifically answer your question, Bikramjit, is that if one of the 3 is absent, it ain't working. We often compare this with a diet, whether it's people building muscle or people losing weight or another diet that people might be on, whether it's for allergies or whatever it is, or a low sugar diet, which becomes even very popular nowadays, or low fat, whatever it all is. You need courage, humility, and discipline at the same time. If you have the courage to say, yes, I want this change. If you have the humility to say, yes, I want this change because it's important to me and my stakeholders. But if you don't have the discipline to see it through, then it will not happen. The results will not come, right? Then it's only talking about it, but not doing something about it. So people need to be high on all three pretty much at the same time. Kanan is asking who determines the behavior. I'm not sure I understand your question. Would you be able to elaborate on that a little bit, Kanan? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how the whole process works on one slide, and then I'll open up for questions. Yeah, so Kanan is asking who fills in this sheet or some of the other sheets I just showed. What I suggest you to do is to take this as an empty sheet into the meeting and then let the leader talk and you write it down. And at the end of the meeting, either you scan this and send it to the leader, or you make a Xerox copy at the cost of the leader in the leader's office. But it's good to let them talk, and you write it down. Gives you something to do and keeps them busy, and it basically also then evidences what people have been saying. Really works. So keep it simple. And then the coachability is a self-assessment, yes. Now and this is actually a good transition into the next slide. Yeah. So how does the process really work on a high level? So we start off by some assessments, which then result in one or two areas for leadership growth that the leader selects based on the assessments that are important to the leader and important to the organization. And let's say the leader says, I want to get better at influencing, as we earlier did. Now, for the assessments, we use a 360, which is Marshall's Global Leader of the Future assessment, or you can use any other 360, that doesn't really matter, and the behavior interviews that we do with the people around the leader. So the 360 gives you a lot of structure and psychometrical relevance, and the behavior interview gives you a lot of color and examples on what people think and feel, so to say, because we think in concept, but we live in detail. So the leader thinks in concept around his or her leadership style, but the stakeholders, they live in the detail of what they see the leader doing on a daily basis. So therefore, the 360 is important for the structure and the conceptual and the psychometry, and the behavior interviews are important for the color and the micro-process examples and the micro-behavior examples that stakeholders come up with. And earlier we had a great example of somebody saying, don't use your phone in meetings. Yeah. Good. Leader focuses on, let's say, influencing as one leadership behavior that's important to the leader and the organization. Selects a number of stakeholders, direct reports, the boss, and some peers maybe. And then on a monthly basis goes to the stakeholders by asking them, I want to get better at influencing. Can you give me 2 or 3 suggestions? The leader listens to the feedback and feed forward from the stakeholders, thanks them for their input. So that's a 5-minute conversation. And then step 4, thinks it over, the various suggestions that the leader has gotten from the stakeholders, makes an action plan, meets up with a coach for the coaching session to refine the action plan and do some skill learning around influencing as an example. And then after the coaching session, step 5, respond to stakeholders by sharing parts of the action plan or the whole action plan. Then step 6, implementing it, make the change visible, and then step 7, follow up throughout the month, and also follow up towards the end of the month by going back to step 1. And on a quarterly basis, we do a short survey called the Leadership Growth Progress Review. And that survey goes to the stakeholders, and the survey is asking them, this leader is trying to get better at influencing. How did he do over the last 3-4 months? Did he got a lot worse, -3, or did he got a lot better, +3, or some scores in between? And then at the end of the year, we do that same survey asking the stakeholders to look back over the last 12 months and score the leadership growth that the leader has had. And if that's positive, then we get paid, or Marshall gets paid, or I get paid. And if that's not positive, then we don't get paid. Now, this leadership growth guarantee is something that Marshall and a few people do. Not all of our stakeholders and coaches do that, but it definitely helps in creating the business case for the organization at the outset. So that's in one slide, in general terms, how Marshall's stakeholder-centered coaching process works. That's how Marshall coaches. So what questions do we have based on this slide and the other things that I earlier shared? So feel free to put them in your question box. Let me see whether there are any questions that came in now. Well, there we go. So how do you ensure that stakeholders are sincere in their appraisal and not have any agenda? Well, so the leader, throughout the coaching process, from the beginning and pretty much on a monthly basis, is asking stakeholders in a feed-forward fashion and also asks them to collaborate. Yeah? So if the leader comes to you on a monthly basis and saying, well, I want to get better at influencing, what suggestions do you have? Or I really appreciate your input, what suggestions do you have? Or these are the 3 suggestions I got from some other stakeholders. What suggestions do you have? So if the leader is sincere about it and asks people for their collaboration, then it's very difficult for stakeholders not to collaborate and not to be sincere and not to be open and constructive in this process. So Ranganath, I think that answers your question. So Satish is asking, what do you do when stakeholders are not fully engaged? They may not see this as a real development intervention and not be accurate in their feedback, suggestions, observations. So first of all, the leader is asking every quarter, for instance, when we do the review, the leader is asking people specifically, this review is coming, this is important to me, be open, be honest, please provide your honest opinions. This is important to me. This survey will come in the next couple of days. Plus, it's anonymous. So thank you for participating. Yeah? So that is one thing. And another thing we do is throughout the coaching process, so throughout the 1-year engagement, we do a number of sessions with the stakeholders. And the first session we actually do very early on, where the coach and the leader together brief the stakeholders in how the process is going to work and how they will be involved and what the benefits for the stakeholders will be. So we have a whole exercise that we do together with the stakeholders so that they see that, hey, this is good for the leader, but this is also good for me, because if I have a better leader to work with, that's good for me too. Now, there could be stakeholders who don't want to be involved, and that's fine too. We tell stakeholders, as you're involved in this, what we ask from you is to provide some suggestions on a monthly basis, to judge the leader from now forward, be constructive and collaborative in this process. If you can do this, that's fine. Don't be a stakeholder. Now, the leader's manager is always a stakeholder in this process. Charles is asking, are leaders in today's world willing to tell their stakeholders that they're being coached? So to us, that's not even a question, right? So we explain the coaching process to the leaders and to the client organization. They know that stakeholders are involved. So from the outset, they have to say yes or no. Very simple. We don't coach without stakeholders. And then actually, it goes even further. As I mentioned at the beginning of the hour when we started, is that who determines whether a leader is effective or not effective? That's determined by the stakeholders. So who determines if a leader gets better? The same stakeholders. So if a leader wants to get better, you need to involve stakeholders. If a leader gets coached and he doesn't involve stakeholders, it's very difficult for the stakeholders to see that the leader gets better. It's the perceptions of stakeholders that's resilient, and that's the same at home, so to say, right? That's the same in our private environment. People's opinions are resilient, so you also need to manage the process of helping people. So you also need to manage the process of helping stakeholders to see that changes have been happening. So let me see how many sessions are conducted with the leader during the annual assignment. It's a 12-month process, and we basically have 12 to 15 sessions. So one other thing that Marshall does, except for that Marshall only gets paid if results are being positive as assessed by stakeholders. Another thing we do is unlimited hours, because leaders are busy people, and they don't have the necessity to spend as much as possible time with a coach. So they're okay with the understanding that, yes, we have monthly coaching sessions for a couple hours, but if you need more time, we spend more time. If you need less time, we spend less time, because it's all about helping the leader to get measurably better. So Conan is asking, when you do the year-end survey, how accurate are stakeholders' perceptions? So actually, they're very accurate, because we do it every quarter, so the stakeholders are already used to it, so they're used to giving their opinion. Secondly, the manager is a stakeholder in the process, and the manager has his or her opinion as well. And every quarter, the leadership progress review goes to the leader and also goes to the manager of the leader. So the perception that the leader has and the perception that the manager of the leader has are converging throughout the 1 year on how stakeholders think about them and how stakeholders see change and how accurate stakeholders reflect their opinions. So that's why towards the end of the year, it's really accurate. So Satish is asking that sponsors at times don't put in the necessary time to invest to developing their coachee. So that's all right, Satish. I mean, there's a lot of bosses who are busy people, right? The manager of the leader are even more busier than the leaders themselves. Now, it takes about 5 minutes for the manager to be involved on a monthly basis, and that should be enough. Because at the same time, the stakeholders of the leader, they become the real coaches in the process. Marshall talks about that all the time. Stakeholder-centered coaching is about the coach facilitating a process where the stakeholders become the real coaches of the leader. Now, and if the manager of the leader sees that the leader as an individual has become better in the eyes of the stakeholders, and even if the manager of the leader has not been involved that much, then that's still fantastic. So the sponsor doesn't need to be involved that much in order to get great results. And I think that's fine. It's fine for the manager of the leader to outsource the development of the leader to the people who work for the leader. I think that's fantastic. So Nietzsche is asking, how many interactions do the stakeholders have with the leader during the 12 months on a monthly basis? Now, our assumption is that the leader works with his direct reports and peers and manager pretty much on a daily or weekly basis together, right? So it's the idea of stakeholder-centered coaching is changing leaders real time on the job. The leader is already working with stakeholders in a normal fashion anyway. This is just part of what they do normally anyway. Okay, so the number of interactions with stakeholders throughout the 12-month period is actually numerous, and the specific coaching-related involvement, as you see here on the slide, is basically once a month for 5 minutes or so. Then Jai Shankar is asking, is stakeholder perception the only determinant of the progress, or is it also business results as well? Well, the short version of the answer is the leader focuses on 1 or 2 areas for leadership growth. Let's say I want to get better at listening and influencing. That is determinant. So if all the stakeholders say, yes, this leader has become more effective over the last 12 months in terms of listening and influencing, so things are being rated. There is also a verbatim comment section on what stakeholders think. So there's also the articulation of their rating. Plus, we ask a few other questions in terms of how the leader has been involving the stakeholders in terms of monthly meetings, etc. So there are 7 questions really. And so the leadership growth between -3 and +3, that's the only determining factor for payment in the leadership growth area, not business results. Bikamjit is asking, what is the percentage of leaders that really change? Well, because we assess people at the outset in our coachability assessment, our success rate is way more than 95%. So of all the people we coach, way more than 95% of them get measurably better throughout the 1-year engagement. Because we're not a gambling organization on whether leaders get better or not better and whether they want to do their work or not their work. The whole idea of no growth, no pay at the end based on results, totally transforms the relationship between the coach, the leader, and the leader's manager, i.e. the client organization. Because the company is investing serious money in the coaching, the leader and the stakeholders invest serious time in the coaching, and the coach, you invest your time and resources as well. So no growth, no pay based on results aligns the interests of all the parties. The company says, I invest, but I want to see results. The leader says, I invest and I want to get better at this, and this is my business case. And the coach says, I'm happy to support and facilitate this process, and I'll make sure you get better. So everybody is aligned. So therefore, we don't manage smiling faces. We don't manage whether the leader feels that this was a nice session and I felt so good about it. No, this is about you wanted to get better at influencing. This was really important to you. This is your business case. This is really important to the stakeholders. This is your business case. I know it's take courage, humility, and discipline. We assessed that earlier as well. So now, what are you going to do about it? What's your action plan? What's the next step? Okay. So let me give it back now to Hemant and CJ, and I'm happy to stick around for some more questions later on, but we basically have exhausted the hour, so I don't want to take more time from people than they have committed themselves to. So CJ, Jay, Hemant?
Thanks very much, Will. I think this was a very thought-provoking session. I'm sure all of us, most of us have taken some wonderful insights from what you have spoken, and I'm certain many of these are very easily, or I wouldn't say easily, but can very quickly be applied to the kind of work that we do. So this was a very useful hour for me, and I guess I'm echoing the sentiments of the rest of the panel here when I'm saying this. So thank you once again very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Hemant, and all the coaches who have been here on board. Thank you so much. And Will, you had made this hour kind of hour of far, so it was interesting, and we could able to take a lot.
Yeah.
With respect to feed forward, as well as with respect to the courage, humility of the leaders, it was wonderful and very much applicable. So thank you so much, Will and Hemant and all my executive committee members. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure to do this, and it's always a pleasure also to come to India, to the garden city of Bangalore, even though it has been more city than garden nowadays, but it's still a beautiful place to be. If you would like to have some more confirmation or information or some more discussion, shoot me an email at wcl@secoaching.com. At the same time, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn with the addresses right here. So it's basically linkedin.com/in/W.Linson, and then connect with me through LinkedIn. And I also will be sharing the PowerPoints that we did today with Jay, and then he can share this with you as well. So thanks a lot, everybody. Enjoy a great rest of your evening and a great Friday tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.